Hey, everybody, welcome back to Building Better Business, the show where we talk about how to grow your small business. And I'm incredibly excited. We have a wonderful guest here today. He is a guy that I have been connected with on Facebook for a while. I've had the chance to speak with. Besides this podcast, we've gotten to meet virtually a few weeks ago. His name is Gary Searle, and he runs Customerse, which is all about how do you improve your referral-based marketing. Gary, I'm so excited to have you on the show.
Hey, I really appreciate you having me on. I'm really looking forward to this and hoping to provide a lot of value to your audience.
Yeah, I think it's going to be value packed. Gary, I've gotten to meet you before, and it was a great discussion that we had. And so I think I'm excited to share some of this with our audience. And Gary, before diving into sort of the nuances, if you're listening to the show, I really want to dive a lot into the referral marketing side. Full transparency, it's an area of my business of CEO Finance Academy where we haven't really tapped a lot into. And so I'm really excited to have an expert like Gary on here to share about some of this stuff. I think, especially if you come from the online world where you read a lot about organic marketing and paid advertising, we miss this internal marketing piece of referral marketing. And we have this incredible expert in Gary here. Gary, I'd love to, I've been starting these episodes out with asking people, were you an entrepreneur at heart as a kid? Like, were you someone who grew up with entrepreneurial tendencies? Was it something that you kind of fell into later in life? What was the young Gary like in terms of a business mindset?
Yeah, so I don't know where it came from because none of my family are like it, but I do feel like I had that from a very young age. As young as probably 11, 12, I was always fascinated by businesses and the way that they grow and the things that they do that are maybe different from other businesses. So I definitely had that. And for me, I always thought that I would end up working for myself. So I don't know where it came from, but yes, from a very young age, I always felt like that was the path for me.
Were you like I don't know, here in the States, we have like lemonade stands on the street, a lot of stuff like that's a very like small kid kind of early business. Did you have any early ventures, or was it more just idea thinking and then later in life started to dabble in business?
So yeah, at a young age, it was more just the learning about businesses and researching it and being fascinated by it. But the one thing I did do is with a friend, we set up a shop in a garage that we had. So it was like a garage you put a car in.
Yeah.
And we set it up in our local neighborhood, and we would sell stuff from there. We'd go to a shop down the road, buy like sweets and stuff from that shop, and then sell it for more from that garage for people that didn't want to walk to the shop. We would get rid of bits and pieces that we didn't want of our own stuff, or we'd go to other people and say, is there any things you don't want anymore that we can take off your hands? And then we would sell it from there. So that was probably the one thing that we did do that was kind of like an early experience of running a business from a young age.
Oh my gosh, you guys were, I don't know if you ever, it makes me think of Gary V. If you're familiar with Gary Vaynerchuk, runs his, he's an entrepreneur here in the States where even now he's successful. He's probably in the $100 billion range, still on, makes videos at times every so often going to we call them garage sales here, and flipping things. He'll go find a set of baseball, cards and then flip them on eBay for 10 times the price. And I can just imagine young Gary with your buddy down there just flipping stuff. That's awesome. So I always ask because some people I've just found there's kind of two camps. One's like, I was born with it, I always knew this is what I was going to do. And two, like circumstantially something happens and they realize, hey, I need to do this for myself. It's kind of cool. You had the initial, feeling that it's what you're going to do. And then I'd love to dive in, Gary. How does Customerse come about? How do you start the business? What led you to wanting to start Customerse? And maybe if you feel like, hey, that's not even the place to start, would love to kind of know, how do you transition into starting your own business?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Actually, it's the perfect place to start because it wasn't the business I imagined that I would eventually start or fall into, even though I was fascinated by referrals and word of mouth. I was also fascinated by customer service, and that was my first business. I set up a consultancy helping businesses to improve their customer service, but it wasn't focused on I wasn't focused on referrals.
Yeah.
And I always had that fascination for it. Like why some businesses generate more referrals than others, why some people have get customers and people to talk about the businesses and other people just don't. Yeah. So I started that business. Long story short, that business did well, but from my own perspective in terms of like work-life integration, work-life balance, as some people call it. It was awful, and I ended up burning out and just quitting it because I fell out of love with that business. And I always knew that I would start again, but I didn't know exactly how or when. And then I realized that my love for marketing had really grown from that first business, in particular word of mouth and referrals. So then I started to study it even more than I already was. And then I realized that there was a gap in the market for it. There's not too many marketing companies out there focused on word of mouth and referrals. So that was a little bit of a gap. And then also how many businesses, one, weren't optimizing that area of their marketing or didn't even know that they could optimize it. And they were so focused on bringing in organic referrals, they didn't realize that they could actually influence it to then make it a predictable and consistent way to generate clients. And the great thing is then it can be an additional source to whatever you're already doing, because it's not to replace what you're already doing. It's a supplement to turn each of your clients into one or more clients on top of that.
Yeah. And I think it's such a, I'm sure there are plenty of businesses that are tapping into it, but just from my observation consulting with 15 plus companies every month, seeing that not many of them are tapping into word of mouth referrals or creating an internal marketing system. I guess I'd love to start with you there, Gary. Where did the fascination come from for the customer success side of things? And for you, was there an experience for you? Was it something that you just found you were really good at and became a niche? How did you know that was going to be an area of focus for you?
Okay, so the customer success side of it, there's always a story that I always tell. It's the one story that did start that fascination. And then on top of that, I naturally grew into referrals because it's so closely linked. So again, at a young age, me and my mum went into a shop. She bought something and later on changed her mind and took it back to the shop. They took it back, no problems. There was no issues there whatsoever, and that was fine. And they took like her name, address, phone number, like most businesses do, or at least they do in the UK. But then nothing ever gets done with that. You never hear from that company again. They never seem to have taken it. So it always seems like a bit of a precaution thing or just a standard system that they have. But then later on that day, that company, I think it was in management or head office, phoned up my mum and wanted to make sure that she was happy with the service. The reason why she took it back, and it was nothing that they could have done better, or the product wasn't faulty, and is there any way that they could improve as a business and to get it to go back. And both me and my mum were just fascinated. We're like, nobody has ever done that before, and it's such a small thing, but the fact that nobody has ever done it in however many years we've each been alive, it just stuck with me. And I still remember this story 15, 20 years later, however much it is, and I still talk about it now. And it is the one thing that grew my fascination for businesses and in particular customer experience and customer success.
Yeah, I think what's so interesting about that story too is it's not they wowed us with the product and it made me want to go scream about the product. It was actually, hey, we for whatever reason didn't need the product or didn't want this one specific one, but the thing that stuck out was just that they cared enough to ask and to reach out, and that created an experience for you in itself that I think we overlook as owners, which is, I think we typically look at it, I want you to love the product and share the product, but you can also create a relationship from, hey, even if you don't love the product, can we still have a positive relationship with you as the customer? And it kind of segues into maybe I think some tactical things I'd love to dive into you with, which is if you have a smaller business that's starting out and you're kind of working with them, Gary, how do you think through this word of mouth generating process, right? So I think a lot of times, even in our business, we've fallen into the camp of, we just hope the product's so great, people want to go tell each other about it, right? And we've talked, that's a common misconception. I'm sure it happens and it's possible, but for most of us, I guess I'd love to maybe start with even small business owners just starting out. Why should they be thinking about creating a word of mouth referral process from the get-go?
Yeah, of course. So I think it's actually more important for a small business than it is for a larger business, even though it is important for both. But for smaller businesses who maybe don't have the capital to spend on marketing, referrals is essentially a free way to generate more clients, and it's in a way that's untapped by a lot of companies, as you said. So it makes sense to let them know from the very beginning that you're going to be asking for referrals, it makes sense to prioritize turning the few customers that you do get in early on to then refer you and talk about you to other people, because that one client can then turn into 2, 3, 4, maybe even more clients that you otherwise wouldn't have had if you didn't prioritize getting referrals. And as you said, you can't rely on them just organically sending you referrals, because people are busy, they've got lives, they're not going to think about, oh, I must refer you to someone else. You're generally going to have to ask, unless you obviously do something that's very different, very unique, or it's just so far above anyone else that they just happen to be talking about it, or somebody asks them and says, like, let's say, for example, they join a gym and it's really, really good, and then somebody says, oh, I'm thinking about joining the gym. They might just naturally say, oh, I can go to here, it's brilliant. Otherwise, they're not going to be talking about you. So it makes sense to influence that and encourage more word of mouth, and to actually prioritize getting referrals as a small business, because it's a low cost way of doing it. And essentially it can be free a lot of the time. And even if it does cost you something to incentivize it, it only costs you after you've already got the money from the new customer client coming in. So again, it's as good as free anyway.
Yeah. I love that. And I want to come back to the incentive part as just, I'm sure that's just one strategy or a tactic that you can employ. It made me think though, Gary, for you, how important is that someone feels about their own product or service that they're delivering to sort of feel confident to ask for these referrals? So I think maybe there's I think there's a part of the reason maybe people don't create a process from the get-go or from the jump is, I just don't even know if I'm delivering that great of a product or service. So I'm curious for you as you jump in, right? And I don't know if it's ever happened where someone's just, they're maybe it's a newer business, or someone's like, we have a lot of churn, we have a lot of turnover, and it's maybe because the product or service isn't as great as we'd like. How, when you work with a client, maybe in a situation like that, is there a look at, hey, we need to look at how you're delivering your product and service to help with this? Or do you feel like it can be even not related, the product or service itself, not related to building a word of mouth process?
So it's definitely related. I personally have not had any issues with clients not believing in their products, but that's just because I only work with companies who do truly believe in their products and deliver great products anyway. Yeah. Because if they don't deliver a great product, I'm not going to go in and help them improve their product, because that's not what I do. So they have to have that in place already. But the one thing I do sometimes have is that they feel awkward asking for a referral, and they feel like it's a bit intrusive, or it's going to ruin the relationship, or whatever that might be. Yeah. But I actually say to them, it's like, do you believe in your product? And usually it is, well, yeah, I do believe in it. And I can see they genuinely do, but they have this thing of, it's still not right to ask for referrals. And I said, well, if you believe in your product and you know it's really great and it gets results, it's your duty to ask for more referrals, because all you're trying to do then is improve the lives or improve the business or whatever it might be of that person that is being referred to you. So you're doing them a service, and then you're doing the person that you're asking a referral for a service as well, because then they get to help somebody else that they care about as well. So if you believe in your product or service, then you should be asking for referrals. And if you don't believe in your product or service, then you need to improve your product or service, because you shouldn't be selling anything to anyone that you don't believe in yourself, because how can you expect other people to believe in something that you don't believe in and don't deliver?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a great point. And probably if that's the case, if you're listening to this and you're at that place, it's probably something to go back to the drawing board of how do we create something that we feel really passionate and great about. I would love to dive into that for just a sec, Gary, of, I think that's such a common thing of just feeling, I'd love to ask, like, why do you think we feel rude or intrusive or not good to ask people for something, especially when we believe in it? I think this is a real conundrum for a lot of people, and you had a great, response to how to view it. But why do you think why do you think it's so hard for business owners to feel polite or kind or doing a good thing? Where does that struggle or fear come from for us?
So there's probably a number of reasons, and it's probably something I should dive into more actually, but the one key one that I know comes up time and time again is that they always feel like they're asking for themselves. So they're saying, who do you know that you could refer? And it always feels a bit intrusive that you're asking them to do you a favor. So I always say, well, flip it on its head then. Do them a favor. Help them to help someone that they care about. when they're referring you, get them to refer you to something that's not going to cost them anything. It might just be a free experience of something that you deliver, a free trial of something. That way, then they're not asking that person to pay any money. And they could also feel awkward about that, is essentially they're asking someone to pay you money to become your customer. And they might feel awkward about that. So take money off the table, give them a free trial of something, give them an experience of something, and flip it on its head by making it about the person that you're asking the referral from, and then also the person that they're going to be referring. Don't make it about yourself. And then all of a sudden it becomes a lot more easier to ask for referrals, and actually it becomes a lot more successful in getting referrals when you do it that way anyway.
Yeah. I love that too, because it essentially, especially like the free trial or free experience is, hey, I'd love for you to gift something to someone rather than ask someone for something, right?
Yeah.
It becomes much more, in my mind, it becomes more giving than transactional, right? Like, hey, I'm asking for something back. And I think that's a great way to approach it. And yeah, maybe if you don't have a free version of something, you can find something like could even be a simple ebook or something that could be beneficial. Yeah. Gary, I guess from a I'd love to dive in kind of on a tactical level here of, let's say someone's sitting on a past customer base of, I don't know, let's just say 100 past clients in the last 4 months. They've never asked for a referral. You come in, I don't want to steal your secret sauce here, but how do you approach a company? I'd love to get a sense of, like, if that's the scenario we're coming from, you come in, where does your brain go? What are the things you're looking for to start creating a process for word of mouth for a company?
Yeah, so if there's a company that has never asked for referrals before, they've never even mentioned that they're looking for referrals, I don't actually start at that point. I start at the point of, let's create a culture of referrals from the beginning. So let's now go into start telling your clients that at some point soon you are going to start asking them for referrals, but you're only going to do so when they're very happy with the services that they're getting and the results they're getting. So then what you'll do is you'll start making a point to ask for client feedback. You'll start making a point of really building on the client relationships that you already have and then making them even better. And then when you do that, you're also letting them know that at some point when we have improved this part of our business, because you can even be honest with them, you just say, we are improving this part of our business right now, the building client relationships, getting the great client results, the client experiences, and also on top of that, asking for referrals, because that's going to be a big part of how we generate clients from now on. So is it okay with you that if in 2 months' time, 3 months' time, you feel like we have made that improvement to a point where you're really happy with the business that you're doing business with and you're purchasing from, that we could ask you for 1 referral, 2 referrals? And most of them are going to say yes, because you're doing them a favor by improving your own self as a business. So then they're more likely to want to recommend others to you. So that's where I generally start, is just start to build a culture of referrals within your business in the first place.
I love it. I think there are a couple of things that really jumped out to me. One is pre-framing from an expectation standpoint of and asking for permission. So pre-framing and with permission. So it's not, hey, regardless of your experience, we're going to ask for referrals. It's what I heard from you is, hey, if we can agree that you're making really great progress and this is transforming, giving you the kind of transformation you're looking for, would it be okay if we were to then ask for referrals? And it's sort of like a double agreement of, like, yes, if we're having success, I would love to think about that. And it's putting them in the mind of, well, we expect you to have success, and therefore we expect that we'll ask you in the future. And now we're all agreed upon, and it should feel less awkward, I imagine, because you've had that talk with them. And I imagine, hopefully, you're tracking your clients' success and understanding they're in a place where they're happy. And success can be multifactorial, meaning might be your objective view of success on numbers, but it might also be just subjectively, they feel great about it, they're loving the experience.
Yeah.
Let's say there is a bit of a culture of referral there, Gary, and you come in, and actually I'll back up. So when you're building that culture, curious, is that you then going in with maybe a sales team and having them even jumping in from the beginning of the sales side, or is it more like as soon as they become a client, we're really going to start focusing on, hey, let's start talking and pre-framing a bit about the customer experience, checking in with them more often? Where do you usually come in? Is it do you start with even the sales process itself, or is it usually once someone becomes a client?
Actually, it's before that.
Okay.
So you think of the client journey, essentially think of it as awareness, consideration, purchase, loyal customer, advocate. the customer journey begins before they pay you any money. It begins at the awareness stage. As soon as they hear about your business, that's the point that you want to start thinking about the customer experience that they're getting before they even become a customer. But I actually think of people as my customer before they've even paid me any money, and they become a client when they pay me money.
Gotcha.
And that's where I'm trying to really start to influence them and make them think that, one, I'm really focused on the client experience. One, I'm really focused on them, and I'm really focused on the results, and that I am building my businesses on referrals, word of mouth. So if you do come in, I am going to want you to talk about me to your friends, family, anyone that you feel this is relevant to. And that's a big part of my business. So for me, it starts before they even pay you any money.
Okay. And when you're going in, so would that be even, are you coming in as early as like the marketing side as well at times, helping with, I don't know if that's with messaging or with how you're presenting services? Okay. Cool.
Yeah, we look at the entire customer journey, and because I consider that part, the awareness stage, as part of the customer journey, and that is essentially the marketing side, I am looking at that. I'm not going to come in and completely change everything that you do. I'm going to come in and maybe encourage a few small tweaks that's going to elevate the chances of you getting referrals later on down the line on a more consistent basis.
Awesome. Awesome. I think that's really powerful. I think a lot of times we, just admittedly think of the referral side starting post purchase, and to hear from your side, we're looking at it from even awareness, like as soon as they become aware of us, how can we instill this culture? And I think it's fascinating. If you're out there and you're struggling with this, obviously, reach out to Gary. This is exactly what he works on. Gary, I want to ask how powerful can this be once a company gets it right? Like, I don't know if you have an example of a case study for yourself, but like, let's just say, we start building this culture and, you're able to start implementing a process. What can this do for a company in terms of, I don't know if example wise of just like reducing cost per acquisition, more importantly, building like, drawing in more of the ideal clients. Would love kind of just some anecdotal experience on your end of, what does this look like if a company gets it right?
Yeah, of course. So there's lots of things that can actually influence. It could be getting cost of acquisition down. It could be in terms of getting more of the ideal clients, because you're going to be asking the right clients for referrals. So you're not going to be asking people that you actually don't want to work with, because they probably know a lot of the same people, but you're asking the right people. But I actually come at it from a place of speeding up the growth of your business. Now, most people want to speed up the growth of their business. Occasionally you get some people, actually, I don't want to, because I feel like that's going to be too much for me right now and I don't have the kind of bandwidth to do it. And we're like, okay, that's fine. We can look at it from a different perspective and we can kind of just use this as an additional thing and not speed it up. But generally that's what we look at it as. And in terms of speed, the average speed of growth is going to be at least double. Sometimes it can be as much as 300% increase, because for each client that you bring in currently, we could turn that into an average of maybe 2 or 3 more clients. So that's obviously going to speed up the growth of the business. And if they've already got a lot of the foundational pieces in place already, then I can go in and we can get referrals really quickly. Like I had one a few weeks ago where I literally gave them one system that they could follow because they was already in a place to do it. And in the space of an hour, they generated 40 referrals just because of the foundational pieces they already had. And all it took was one system. And it came in and the referrals were there. They were ready to be picked up, but they just weren't doing anything to get them. So I said, do this one thing and I guarantee you will get some referrals. And I wasn't sure how many they would get, but they came back and they said, well, I've just generated 40. And I'm like, brilliant. We can do this again next month. And then you can generate potentially another 40 or more, or however many, but we can do this over and over again now. That's how powerful it can be.
Yeah. Well, I see it as a, just a multiplier, right? Of like, because it becomes compounding over time of if that system's working and it works at, X% on average. I mean, and that pool just becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. I can see where you kind of creates this flywheel effect of just going around and around. I would love to maybe, yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking like, wow, 15 or 40 referrals, especially if you're in a B2B space, that could be honestly record breaking numbers, revenue wise, and would bring on great problems of how do we maintain customer happiness and success, which I'm sure is is a great problem to have. Gary, where do you see, I guess I'd love just kind of to ask you of where do you see certain companies going wrong with word of mouth marketing referrals? So Like where do you see people either jumping the gun? Are they getting information out there that you're like, oh man, that's common advice, it just doesn't go very well? If someone's listening to this and they're like, I'm already trying to do this, and I'm just curious, like, are there things that you're seeing where a lot of companies are trying things that just you're like, that's not the best way to do that, or common sort of mistakes or just inefficiencies that they're doing, that if someone's listening might be able to go, okay, I can stop this and I should do it this way? What are some pitfalls that people are falling into?
Yeah, so there's loads, but some of the main ones that I see is one, asking the wrong people, asking at the wrong time, or asking in the wrong way. They're kind of like the three main ones. So asking the wrong people, it could be someone you've only just met. And in your marketing, maybe you like, if you're running an online business and you're doing a lot of social media stuff, you just connect with someone and you essentially ask them for a referral. Why on earth would they send you a referral? They know nothing about you. It's just the same as a cold pitching them. It's not going to work. Or it could be asking a client who hasn't had great results, or they've just recently put in a complaint. Don't ask them for a referral because they're not going to be doing it. So asking the right person and then asking them in the right way. And this kind of goes back to what we said earlier. Instead of saying, can you do this for me? Can you refer someone to me? Or who do you know? It's a case of asking them to do somebody else a favor, or gift something to someone else, or put it on their terms. And it can be also a case of like you're asking them in a way that, like I said, it makes it less intrusive when you're actually reaching out to that other person. So you're asking them in the right way, and it's also like you're helping them to do it in the best way. So you're going to tell them exactly who you're looking for. You might even give them a script and how they could reach out to someone, and so that they don't have to do any work. And you're telling them exactly who to ask and how to ask and that sort of thing. So then it makes it easier, so they don't have to put in too much work. Because if you ask them to put in too much work, they're unlikely to want to do it, or they're going to feel more kind of resistant in sending that referral in the first place. So it's just little things like that. And then, like I said, asking them at the right time as well. So asking them when they've just had a great win. So they've had a great result working with you, or it could be even a case of they've just renewed their contract with you because they're saying, "No, this is brilliant. This has really helped me. I want to go on to the next thing." You just upsold them. Where you say, "Well, great. Now, who would you like to also help get the same result?" And it's little things like that. It's just asking them at the right time, the right people, and in the right way.
Yeah, I think that's super powerful. If you're listening to this, go back and look at, am I making sure I'm asking the right people? Am I asking them at the right time? Are there, and this is something we've been doing in our company now after talking with you, Gary, is what are those inflection points of wins for our clients that are kind of a higher high versus those, there's always parts of working together where it's kind of more of a plateau. There's not as much excitement or wins, versus we have certain inflection points where boom, there's a huge change. And it'd be much more meaningful to reach out to them versus, in the middle of a kind of a lull period, thinking, hey, do you want to get excited about this? And so I think that's really great. And then how you're asking them as well, which goes into one last tactical question I wanted to ask. I think there's a big, I'll just say from my point of view, there's a big mixed feelings about incentivizing for word of mouth referrals, right? Some people believe, well, if we're just that good, we don't need to incentivize anyone. Other people think, well, if I were on the other end, I'd love to be incentivized to refer someone. How do we, so I think, a lot of times we just think of, well, money is the incentive. Can I give someone a gift card, or can we give them cash or something? I'd be curious, how do you think about incentivizing for referrals? Is it looking at, well, what's the culture of a company, and yes, actually giving a financial incentive is a big thing versus, the culture of this company is actually more around gift giving and can we do this? How do you think about the incentivizing side? Is it a necessary thing? Do we should just look at it differently? It's kind of a broad ranging question here, but how do we think about the incentive piece? Because I know there's mixed feelings there of like, if it's so good, I shouldn't have to give in the sense of maybe financially, versus I look at it and I'm like, man, if you want to pay me $500 to refer someone, and I think it's a great thing, I'd be more than happy to do that,
Yeah, exactly. So like you said, there's two schools of thought on it. And my thinking is it's not always necessary, but it can help. And it depends, like you said, on the culture of your business. Is it based around incentivizing things anyway? If you are a business that gives free trials and free experiences, then actually incentivizing it could be quite a good way to influence it and get even better results. So and sometimes as well, the incentive doesn't always have to be financial or gain in from a material thing. It can be the sense of you get to help somebody else that you care about. That can be an incentive in itself, because they might have somebody that they really care about. Let's say you're a personal trainer, for example. If they've got somebody who they know is really, it's affecting their relationships, it's affecting their business life, their work life, because they're overweight and they're not productive and they're eating fast food and all this, they're going to want to help that person. So that can be an incentive in itself to actually send that referral to them. So there is, you can incentivize it, but it doesn't always have to be on a financial or material type way. But at the same time, it's not necessarily a bad thing if you do that, but it needs to be the right thing, and you need to frame it in the right way, and not make it the most important part of getting the referral. I find it needs that only needs to be a way to encourage it and influence it a little bit more, but not to base it entirely around the incentive side.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, because you could have someone who just wants to refer to get the financial incentive and aren't thinking through who's an ideal client, which ultimately then leads to a poor client experience if you do work with them, and then it kind of, then less chance of generating a word of mouth referral from there. I think that's awesome advice, Gary. For me, from this episode, man, I've taken so much away from especially timing of referral marketing, to thinking about, and not only timing of the ask, but timing of when you start even communicating the idea of word of mouth referrals, and building a culture of referral marketing. And then lastly, just, hey, how do we think through incentives? I think it's just something we've really tested and have played around with, and are thinking through, like, well, money's the answer. It's like, well, that's not really necessarily the best tool. And so really thinking through those things.
So there's actually, there's one thing I would add on the financial
Yeah.
incentive thing that could be really powerful, which not many businesses do. When it comes to, if you are thinking that you could financially incentivize someone to send you a referral, sometimes the best time to send them that financial incentive isn't as soon as they become a client or as soon as they send them the referral. It could be further down the line. So let's say they send someone to you, and then 6 months later, you send them a check for £500, and you say, this client you referred to us, they've had a great experience, they've had great results, and they were exactly the type of clients that we want. Now we would like to give you this as a way of saying thank you. So then it's actually then influencing and kind of reinforcing that you want them to send you the right people, not just anyone. So they'll be incentivized if they send the right people, and then you're able to provide the great results for that person. So it's actually something you give them later down the line. That can be a good way to make it a financial incentive.
I actually really love that too, because especially if it's not stated up front, it's a surprise sort of thank you. It also means, hey, you're thinking about, you remembered that I was the one that referred them. It wasn't less transactional and more of a thank you kind of thing, rather than like, great, here's your check right away, thanks, like, see ya. But more of a, hey, like, wow, we really appreciated this. Thank you so much. I actually really, really like that. Gary, I want to say thank you so much for taking time to come on and breaking down a lot of the word of mouth marketing strategies. I'd love, before we kind of wrap this up, tell us a little about Customerse, who you work with, like, who are ideal clients for you, and if anyone wants to reach out to you, how can they do that?
Yeah, so I primarily work with online service-based businesses. There's a couple of bricks and mortar ones that I work with, but it's primarily online. This stuff is good whether you're just starting out or whether you're already established. So it doesn't really matter how much money you're making in your business or how many clients you've got. Although if you're going to be looking at getting referrals from clients, then obviously you need to have had a good history of clients already. But you can get referrals from strategic partnerships with other businesses, and that's one of the things I do. So how I help you will depend on where you're at in your business and what you're looking to do. But essentially, as long as you're an online business that's service-based, that is very highly client-focused, and you really want to add this piece of marketing into your business, then I can help. And the best way to contact me then is on Facebook, because that's where I spend a lot of my time when I'm not with clients. I am on Facebook a lot. So reach out to me and we can have a conversation. And if anyone from hearing this wants to reach out, just say, I listened to the podcast from Will Boyd, and then I'll know exactly who you come from. So then I'll make sure that I give you all the time and attention that you need, and essentially.
Awesome. I'll have the link to Gary's Facebook in the show notes as well. as well as any links to Customerse. Gary, I just want to say thank you, man. I really appreciate it. I know you're busy. You've got a large clientele that you're working with, and really appreciate you coming on the show.
Absolutely. It's been really enjoyable. You asked some great questions and it felt very conversational, and you got me thinking about some things that even I don't think about very much these days. So it got me to think about it on a deeper level. So that was really great.
Hey, well, anytime we can inspire something, that's even better. And this has been amazing. If you're listening to this, we'd love to hear from you too on your biggest takeaway. If there's anything you need to change in your word of mouth referral marketing, and if there's just something that you took away, we'd love to hear from you. Shoot us a message via the website. And guys, we'll catch you on the next episode of Building Better Business.